It's Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Grant Herms. Today on the show, the controversy threatening to force the Make America Great Again party tear itself apart, and that is the Jeffrey Epstein case. I'm going to do a really quick breakdown of what this case is, if you haven't really been following this after Epstein's death since 2019, how it turned into a conspiracy theory, though I'm not going to delve too much into what that conspiracy is, and how it's quickly become a self-inflicted wound for Donald Trump that could cost him key people in his administration and key voters in the next two elections. But first, make sure that you're following or subscribe to Make It Make Sense with Grant Herms on whatever podcast app you listen to this on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell on YouTube for notifications. If you're a watcher, sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack, where I've got brand new articles going up each week. And as always, share the show on social media. It's Mims News Pod. That's MIMS News Pod, all one word, on every platform. I am at Grant Herms on X and Blue Sky, and at Grant Herms TV on everything else. And you may have noticed lately that I've got a brand new partnership with Get Real News. It's America's first grassroots newsroom, and I'll be doing a lot more collaboration with them as we go forward into creating a brand new social media newsroom. So make sure you're following those accounts so you don't miss out on any new things from Get Real News. I'll put a link to getrealnews.org in the show notes. All right, let's get to our show. Hey, listener. You know what the show is all about breaking down the news in a way that actually makes sense. No spin, just real reporting and smart conversations. And as an audience, you're sharp, curious, and engaged. And I know that you value where you spend your time and money. So if you're a brand, an organization, or a cause that aligns with truth, trust, and just cutting through the noise, then we want to partner with you. Whether you're launching a new product, pushing a policy, or you just want to get your message in front of an audience that values insight over outrage, let's make it make sense together. For ad rates, sponsorship packages, and custom campaigns, you can email ads@matchbookmediapod.com. That's ads@matchbookmediapod.com. Because the smartest conversations deserve the smartest partners. Okay, let's get on with the show. Okay, so last week, things boiled over in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation at the Department of Justice. And very quickly, if you don't remember who Jeffrey Epstein is, he was a New York finance guy and a sex trafficker who trafficked hundreds, if not more than 1,000 underage girls, according to the Department of Justice just last week. Now, he was arrested in 2019 and was found dead in his cell while he was being held for trial. The Department of Justice concluded that twice, under two Trump administrations, his first and this one, that Epstein killed himself. His partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, is currently serving a 20-year sentence for her part in grooming and harming young girls in association with Epstein. And on top of that, Epstein was connected to a lot of rich and powerful people. He was friends with former President Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, with Bill Gates, Prince Andrew of the UK royal family, and was photographed or videoed frequently with Donald Trump. Trump called him a terrific guy, telling New York Magazine in 2002, "I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life." Take that for what you will here. Trump and Epstein also worked together to start a modeling agency. That was Epstein's agency. Trump already had one at that point in time. And Epstein, in a recorded interview with one of Trump's biographers, Michael Wolff, said he was Trump's best friend for more than a decade. Now, despite that last part there with Trump and Epstein, Trump's conspiracy-minded base latched onto Epstein because there were a lot of rumors and accusations that he had a client list that was filled with rich and powerful, mostly Democrats and liberal donors that ran what they call the deep state, a shadowy government that's unelected people who actually run the United States and the rest of the world. And these voters, these conspiracy theorists, believe to varying degrees that almost all of these people on this list were pedophiles at the most tame conspiracies, all the way to people who were members of a satanic, child-abusing and eating cabal, and that Donald Trump has been anointed by God to root out those people and expose them, beginning with the fact that the Clintons orchestrated Epstein's death in jail. I know that's a lot. Just know that's where people are on this. And on the campaign trail, Trump and his people were all too happy to exploit that for support. Here is soon-to-be Vice President J.D. Vance and Donald Trump Jr. talking about it last fall.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
I am on every list except the Epstein list. We haven't heard anything about that one in a while. How is it that my father can be convicted of 34 crimes, but no one on Epstein's list has even been brought to light? It's almost like they're trying to protect those pedophiles for some reason. I can't imagine why.
So, first of all here, J.D. Vance, in what he was saying, looks as if he immediately knows that it's a joke. He is smiling, he's holding back a laugh in this interview. And then second, in court documents and in deposition transcripts, Don Jr.'s father is mentioned a number of times. So for him to say that his dad isn't anywhere on these lists is likely just not true. But that gets us to what happened last week and then over the weekend. At the end of last week, there had been some bubbling up of the Epstein files story. It's a cyclical thing in far-right and right-wing media. When they get bored or distracted by whatever, they turn to Epstein to boost their numbers again because people always tune into this story. Now, people had been asking where this client list was because back in February, Attorney General Pam Bondi had said that the list was on her desk for review, and the White House had been giving out binders of what it called the Epstein client list Phase 1 to a bunch of right-wing influencers while during an Oval Office meeting. So as more and more people last week started talking about this thing and how come there hadn't been any movement that they were promised on it, the Department of Justice put out an unsigned memo saying that the list didn't exist and that Epstein killed himself. That was so crazy for the MAGA crowd that it almost immediately boiled over. I mean, take Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, who made a living off of being a right-wing conspiracy podcaster and Fox News host. Here he was back in February talking about the Epstein files.
This Epstein sex ring operation, I'm not letting it go ever.
So that's where the number 2 of the FBI stands on Jeffrey Epstein and this case. Essentially, the deputy director of the FBI is the chief operating officer. They more or less do all the day-to-day work of running the FBI, and the FBI director is really the political face and arm of the FBI. So now you've got the Bonginos of the world on one side and the Pam Bondis on the other, who are supposed to be working together inside the Department of Justice. It's also worth noting here, too, that Pam Bondi was the Attorney General of Florida while Epstein had a home or a second home in Palm Beach, not far from Trump's resort, so she also would have likely known Epstein as well. He was rich with a lot of connections. But back to this split in the Department of Justice, Bongino and Pam Bondi, according to Axios, got into a shouting match last week, so much so that Bongino threatened to resign from the FBI along with FBI Director Kash Patel, who's also been a quote-unquote Epstein truther. And then on Friday, Bongino, again, the guy in charge of running day-to-day operations at the FBI, didn't show up to work. And as I'm recording this on Tuesday, I still don't know if he's back at work. At the same time, the DOJ released what they said was 11 hours of raw video from the camera pointing at Epstein's jail cell where he would later be found dead. But there is a minute missing between 11:59 and midnight, and I don't want to get too conspiratorial here. That's not what this podcast is about. But that missing minute was fuel for conspiracy theorists who were already upset at the Trump administration and specifically the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi. And then it was amplified by Wired magazine, which found that the core data of that video, which is called metadata, that's not important that you know what that actually does, but they found that the core pieces of the video had been tampered with. Now, I need to say here that there is no evidence that this video was deceptively manipulated, which is also what Wired points out, but it certainly is not helping the case among Trump's base supporters here that there's nothing to see. And all of this has caused a huge rift inside MAGA world. And it couldn't have come at a worse time for President Trump, whose poll numbers are underwater, and who's had a series of bad news cycles, specifically last week after his tariffs deal deadline came and went, and he had to walk back his own promise of when he was going to put tariffs in place. If you don't know that, go back and listen to last week's episode on Thursday. It's all about the tariffs. So to get a handle on this story, President Trump took to social media because this has really become a rare moment for him where he hasn't been able to either reframe a story as a win or able to brush it off and get his base to move on. And on Saturday, he posted a 400-word post. And I'm going to read parts of this because if I read the entire thing, it would take way too long. But what he said was partly, quote, "What's going on with my boys," in quotes, and in some cases, gals, also in quotes. "They're all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is doing a fantastic job," in all caps. "We're on one team, MAGA, and I don't like what's happening." He went on to say, "For years, it's Epstein over and over again. Why are we giving publicity to files written by Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, as in former FBI Director James Comey, Brennan, as in former CIA Director John Brennan, and the losers and criminals of the Biden administration who conned the world with the Russia hoax, 51 intelligence agencies, the laptop from hell, and more. They created the Epstein files." And finally, he said, "1 year ago, our country was dead. Now it's the hottest, quote, country in the world. Let's keep it that way and not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about. Thank you for your attention to this matter." So, I know that is a lot, especially from a sitting president of the United States, who is definitely not worried about having close ties to a man who sex trafficked more than 1,000 young girls, according to his own Department of Justice. But, piece by piece here, there are important things. First, he acknowledges the list and files exist, which is different than what his own Department of Justice had said just days before. And then he says it was written by Democrats, which if that's true, then he gave a bunch of right-wing influencers what he would consider to be, at the very least, liberal propaganda, and his campaign was calling for the release of that propaganda. And then for him to say that we shouldn't be looking back at the past, well then talking about a bunch of old conspiracies that he still to this day believes and wants the DOJ to investigate is one thing. And finally, when he says that no one cares about the Epstein case, it undercuts all of the talk about it during the campaign from the people inside his administration currently. And most importantly, that came as a huge letdown for a lot of his supporters who at the very least thought Trump was going to take down powerful, quote-unquote, deep state elites who were harming children. And at the most, they thought he was going to launch a holy crusade against evil. And that disappointment was rampant this weekend. During a huge conservative conference that was happening in Florida, some of the biggest names in right-wing circles were on stage talking about the Epstein files. Fox News host Laura Ingraham got booed at when she said who's supportive of Trump and his handling of the Epstein files. Charlie Kirk, leader of the group Turning Point USA, the far-right group that hosted this convention, asked a crowd about it and said the 7,000 people in the audience were disappointed in the Department of Justice. And then people started talking about how this could be a bigger problem for Republicans. Here's former Fox News host and current Sirius XM radio host Megyn Kelly at that same conference.
But this has gone well beyond this. Like, this could actually cost Trump in the midterms. We need to make a smart choice right now. We can't lose any of the MAGA base.
And let me just...
And she's not alone in thinking this. On again, off again, Trump insider Steve Bannon told the live audience at his podcast, "You're going to lose 10% of the MAGA movement. If we lose 10% of the MAGA movement right now, we're going to lose 40 seats," he means seats in Congress. "In 2026, we're going to lose the presidency." And it seems like Democrats are seizing on that idea too, because overnight, an amendment that would have forced the release of these files within 30 days was killed by Republicans, some of whom have been demanding the release of those same files up until last week. And as I'm recording, California Representative Ro Khanna has put up a resolution demanding the release of the files that's been co-signed by 35 other Democrats and has gotten support from Democratic leadership. And while that resolution would be non-binding, which means it can't actually force anybody to do anything, it is Democrats being on the same side as hardcore far-right conspiracy theorists, which just isn't something you see ever. And that's the thing with all of this, that the people in Trump's inner circle are so worried about, that a coming together of people like that against Trump will drive people away from him and Republicans writ large in 2026 and 2028. And now, I know what you're thinking. People have short memories. Trump is and has always kind of been Teflon when it comes to these scandals, and so many people are already working themselves through the mental gymnastics to somehow say that Trump not releasing these files or getting the DOJ to say that there aren't any files is really just lulling the deep state into a sense of security. And to be clear, we don't have any evidence that that is true. But for a lot of people on the right, the idea that Trump was going to be the billionaire savior to fight for them, that he was going to root out corruption and evil that was controlling their lives and denying them a shot at the American dream, was a core piece of the entire movement for them, a core piece of why they voted for him. And the Jeffrey Epstein files are the things that kind of hold all of that in, hold it all together. And for so many people to all of a sudden be on the same side in opposition to Donald Trump, and for Trump to say that those files, those things that they care so deeply about don't actually matter, means that they were lied to. And they're feeling that right now. And it's got a lot of people already asking, if he's lying to us about this, what else is he lying about? And nobody likes to feel like they got played the fool. Okay, that is it for today's episode. Please rate and review the show on whatever podcast app you're listening to it on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications if you're watching on YouTube. Sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack, where I've got a brand new article getting up there tomorrow. And share the show on social media. It's Mims News Pod. That's MIMS News Pod, all one word on every platform. I am at Grant Herms on Twitter and Blue Sky, and at Grant Herms TV on everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Grant Herms, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.